All right.
We are live. Well, here we go. We've started already while we're just chatting as we come on. Morning, Morena, and welcome to CIO YARN Live. I'm your host, Ryan the Lion, and today's special guest is Shayne Hunter. I'll just say it simply as the CDO of the MOH. He can give us the full title in a moment. And just wanted to say thank you so much for coming on. The whole country knows how busy health is and has been and will continue to be. So we are very grateful for your time. You've been on a couple of different AFQY things, including the very first event in lockdown, which was 2 days into the first global lockdown, at least New Zealand's version of it. And you made the comment of, I've gone from an average of 120 emails to 750 emails, and I've never forgotten it. But it gave us an insight and perspective at the beginning. And we're going to get a bit of, I guess, well, we're going to do a bit of a wrap up, but maybe there will be a bit of commentary because we have our 3 big questions of culture, technology, and the lesson. But of course, as always, let's kick off with asking you to introduce yourself, AFQY styles, a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Thanks, Ryan, and morning tato, everybody. Nice to be on. I do remember that day back in 2020 when I was literally watching emails coming in every 2 seconds at a rate I've never seen in my life. Not so bad anymore. But yeah, a little bit about me. So I'm the Deputy Director General for Data and Digital at the Ministry of Health, and I'm also currently the Data and Digital Lead for Health New Zealand. I'll touch on that a little bit later in terms of the health system structure if we get an opportunity. But my background is, I started my career at IBM actually, so my background is computer engineering. That's sort of my pedigree, I suppose, but I was never really into the tech per se. I was more into the application of the technology. So, I left IBM and actually went and spent 7 years in doing startups in the music industry. I had a bit of a vision and I had an entrepreneurial spirit, and I actually created a business called TouchTunes, and TouchTunes would let you phone up and listen to music before you buy. Used to get hundreds of thousands of phone calls a month. Couldn't sell a bloody CD if we tried. We just were way ahead of the tech. That couldn't do credit cards over the phone. Lots of reasons why we just couldn't solve the problem of instant gratification actually. And so turned it into a data business. Basically, I could tell you which magazine people phoned, what time of day, how long they listen, what tracks they listen to. And so, changed the whole thing, got into a range of other things in the music industry, and then finally decided that I want to do something different. So came back and did some consulting work, and then ultimately ended up in a CIO role across a number of DHBs before this role. Me, and just a little bit more about me, I really love my music. Obviously, that's what sort of drove me into the music industry. Played in a band for a while, called Out to Lunch. Enjoy... To relax, I enjoy listening to music. I've invested a little bit in some hi-fi, so that's just nice to sit there and listen to quality sounds. Got a fairly extensive catalogue of CDs. I think I'm probably about 9,000, and I'm big on motorbike riding. My wife and I enjoy doing touring. I think our biggest ride is it's over 3,000 Ks. I think it was close to 3,500 Ks, and we went every pass in the South Island, Lewis Haast, the lot, and right down to the Catlins, and it was a fantastic trip. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Wow. So what we didn't know about Shayne Hunter, far out. So music startup, ahead of its time. And also the I was trying to think of the right motorbike term, but the motorbike traveling, touring. Yeah. And you mentioned Catlins even, not too far from my little part of the world, Dunedin, and not many people know about it, so it's even more beautiful because you don't go there and there's like 500 people. You go to the famous Hinua Falls in Auckland, or the Waitaki, some of the stuff in Waitakere. And you're walking through this beautiful serene, and then the next thing is like 1,000 people at the waterfall. And you're like, right, not quite what I wanted for my outdoor experience. But coming back to the music start and being ahead of your time, that's pretty interesting because a lot of the entrepreneurial sort of talk about is timing as being quite critical, and but it's just quite fascinating to think that now music. You said you played in a band, Out to Lunch. What instrument? What was your part in the band?
I was percussion, bit of rhythm guitar, and harmonica.
Oh, really?
And some backing vocals, but I'm average at the lot, but I still had fun.
Okay. So I'm envisaging Animal on the drums. Someone on
that's right. No, I played things like the tambourine and the cowbell, and depending on the song we were playing, or a bit of harmonica or something like that.
I don't know if that's quite right. We might have to look up this Out to Lunch band and see if we can find the other members and get some goss on this. So the last one is the music. So what is your favorite music to listen to?
Oh, look, I have a really broad range of music. Actually, I like a lot of different jazz or jazz variants. I like rock. I've actually been to see a band called the Dave Matthews Band, who many people in New Zealand don't know, but in the US are well known. I've seen them in Australia. I've seen them in the States in 4 different locations, and my favourite was a place called the Gorge, which is basically halfway between Seattle and Idaho, in Washington. Well, Idaho's in the next state to Washington State, but they have a place called the Gorge. It's on the Columbia River. It's like a natural amphitheatre, and you get 3 days of the band, and they never play the same song in 3 days. It's very good. Yeah, huge repertoire.
What's one of the songs? Would I know?
Oh gosh. Well, my favourite is actually a song by Dave Matthews called Gravedigger, which is just amazing song. He's just got a cool voice. It's a solo. But yeah, it's got a lot of albums. They're all fantastic. Quite varied music. Got jazz blends, hillbilly, country, rock, folk. Yeah, it's a very, very cool band. Classy musicians. I like them.
Now I think we'll pick it up as it comes in. So I've just found it on YouTube.
That's the one.
Sounding familiar?
That's Gravedigger. Yeah, that's it.
Do you want to get your harmonica out?
There's no harp on this one, actually.
Okay. Well, we will save that for later. We'll bring it back. That can be our closing out song. So let's jump into it. We've got a lot to discuss. And that's because those 3 big questions, they can go as wide or as narrow, whatever you choose. But the first one is culture. So really important, the old culture eat strategy for breakfast. And look, there's all different variations that culture and strategy sit at the same table and eat breakfast. But really, if culture's not happening, then it makes everything else that you're trying to do hard. So what are your key things around culture? What are the things that you like to actively do to ensure a good culture amongst all the different diverse teammates?
Yeah, cool. And listen, if I do this with my neck, and I broke my neck last year. I don't know how many people knew that. I broke it skiing. What? So I was in a neck brace and a thoracic brace for nearly 10 weeks. So I'm still getting, more movement on my neck, which is one of my frustrations, by the way, is I don't feel safe on a motorbike at the moment because I just can't get my head around far enough to be comfortable at intersections. So, but it's coming right, which is good. But I just need to, keep moving it. So I'm not weird. It's just that's what I'm doing.
Can we just take a moment to stop here and recognize? Culture, we'll just take a moment. You broke your neck.
Yes, I did.
And just carried on running the health for the country through COVID without batting an eyelid. Just put on a neck brace. She'll be right, mate. That's pretty huge stuff. Like, neck injuries can lead to a lot of major problems. So I
was very lucky. I was incredibly lucky. I fractured my C7 in 3 places, crushed my T6. When it happened, I lost the feeling in my hands. I'd lay on my back. I didn't get up off my back for probably close to 5 days. When they finally got me in a neck brace, I was literally horizontal all that time, from the time they took me off the mountain down to the medical centre, into an ambulance, up to Tamarunui, up to Waikato DHB, where they did a CT scan and discovered what was really going on. And but I wasn't permanently paralysed. I'm so fortunate, to be frank. And But now what I'm living with is just actually what they've said to me, which is just a message to everyone, is if you're working at a keyboard a lot, which a lot of us do, you might go out for a run and, go to the gym and do a bunch of things, but most people don't actually do work on their neck. And what you find is over time, you all of a sudden you can't, back a car. You got to use the mirrors, because you can't, you lose all the agility in your neck. So they said that my neck is, obviously pretty stiff, but getting better, is in part the result of my accident, but is actually to do with the fact that I probably haven't done, important neck stretches for many years, lived with a lot of tension in my neck. And when you're sort of bound up like I was for 10 weeks in a neck and thoracic brace, everything, all your muscles effectively tighten up. So yeah, so it's been interesting. That was an interesting experience inside the health system, having worked in it as a member of the team, if you like, but actually to be a recipient of it, because I've never had to be in hospital before. So yeah, that was interesting. Inside. Yeah. Well, but if you talk about culture, I mean, one of the things I will say about the people who work in the health system is, in spite of everything that makes it difficult for them, paper-based processes, a lack of tech here and there, whatever, they are just the most giving people of their time, the most caring people. It's such an important part of the culture of health, actually. But yeah, look, for me, culture, I made a bunch of notes and I will refer to them just from time to time, because I did this big brain dump for you. But who we are, how we operate, and how we grow are sort of dimensions that I like to think about culture. I personally...
Oops, you there, Shayne? You've just frozen. And don't worry, team, we'll quickly message him. So I'm not sure if it's frozen for everyone at the other end, but it's frozen for me. So I'm just quickly going to message Shayne. We might have had a momentary glitch. And it may be a matter of Shayne rejoining this call. So just bear with us while we get this sorted out. Oh, are you there? That looks like it could be a Wi-Fi issue with some glitching in it.
There we go. I don't know what happened there.
That's all right. You obviously were aware, and we're back now. What would it be without a little technical glitch? At least it's frozen with a great smile, mate. So I don't know if you can hear me, but it's frozen again, and happened to capture you, albeit eyes closed, but with a good smile rather than one of those. There we go. You're back.
I'm back. Let's fingers crossed that we're all good. All right. Now, so secret sauce, I said, is what I think about culture. For me, I wrote down things like purpose is a must-have, and people need to not just understand organizational purpose, but they need to have their own purpose. I'm big on honesty, integrity, trust and respect. I think they're pretty fundamental. I mean, IBM, when I worked at IBM, had great values. Their respect for the individual was one of the most fundamental values that they had. You treat everybody with respect. Even if you're frustrated, you still need to be respectful. And I like a culture that's, inclusive, that's open, that's transparent. And I'm really big on a culture where people are empowered. I think that if everything rises to the top and everyone has to, approve things and no one knows whether they can actually do something or not, they don't feel empowered. I think it's a fundamental thing that will undermine any organisation and what they want to achieve. I have to say, it doesn't come naturally to me to do it, only because I'm quite driven, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in terms of lessons. But I do think it's important that the culture recognises people's contributions. It's got to be one where people are quite happy to call, do a shout out to people. For example, one thing that I really enjoyed was I picked up a part of the ministry called sector operations, and And I've got quite a diverse workforce, and I like diversity in the workforce, whether it's gender, whether it's, ethnicity or whatever it is. And I picked up a group of people which were interesting for me, were our lowest paid people in the ministry, and were the non-Pākehā, if I could call it that, group of people, which I really struggle with, to be honest, because I think we all deserve, to be, at parity in terms of roles, have equal opportunity in terms of career development. Those sorts of things are really important to me. And I did make a note down here about prioritising learning and looking at how you accelerate learning. So when I was at IBM, for example, I had a different job every 18 months, and every job was a stretch. And, they had a philosophy which I believe in, which was you will always leave this organisation a better person than when you came in. And whether that's just you as a person or whether that's you in terms of your professional development, whether you were there for 6 months or, 26 years, their mission was to make you a better person. And I, fundamentally believe that's really, really critical to a culture. I think ultimately, if people are constantly challenged and given opportunities, then the winner is both the organisation and the individuals themselves. So I have really, some of the things that I do to build culture, so I have something called office hours. I've done it when I was CIO at Cap Coast, Hutt Valley and Wairapa DHBs. I've done it in my current role, and in the DHB world, I did have an office, and but in the ministry, it's all open plan. But I grab a meeting room, and I book out a couple of hours from my diary, and anyone can come and see me about anything. It's not a bitch session. It's if you've got a concern you want to raise, that's fine, but it needs to be raised constructively, and I like solutions, not just problems. But what I've really enjoyed is that it gives me a chance to connect with the people who are absolutely at the coalface, because I've got quite a big team, and it's very easy to sort of sit there and operate with your senior managers and not be connected to what's going on. So I've come people telling me about what they're doing just to keep me informed. I have people coming to me with ideas on things that they like to do. I have people coming to me with things that are barriers that are preventing them from moving forward, and with some suggestions on how we could work differently. I've really, really, really enjoyed doing the office hours. And the other one that I did, particularly when I came into this new role, was I called it the apprenticeships. And I would literally go and spend time up to an hour with someone doing their job. In one case, one of the managers speed dated me around her entire team of DBAs to just find out what they actually were doing. And I find that really, for me, that's a really important part of the culture, because I feel that the leader needs to be accessible. And I don't know how you can lead a team of people if you don't know what they do. You don't have to understand every single bit of detail, but if you don't really understand what their role in life is at work. And it's also just interesting just getting to know people, and it's not all about work. You talk about all sorts of things. So for me, that's something that I've done to try and build culture. I've invested in delegation's a big thing for me. So giving people an opportunity to stretch is a really important part of a culture I try and build. I've been really supportive of secondments. It's really easy to say, well, you're really busy and you're caught up in your role, and I don't quite know how the work's going to get done. But if you say to people, look, how do you solve the issue of replacing yourself? They will solve that, usually with a team that's working well, and then that frees up an opportunity for them to actually, grow as people. So that's something that I've really supported. I brought someone into my part of the organisation and called him our equity lead. He's a young Māori fella, Peter Barrett, who you probably know. You think he's been to at least one of the AFQYs in Wellington. He's fantastic. But we decided that, we needed, as part of our culture, to build equity by design into all of our thinking. And he's been doing some fantastic work. And that's been really, really interesting from a culture point of view, getting people more involved and engaged in Te Ao Māori and thinking about equity just generally, not just for Māori but across the board. I've really enjoyed watching the team embrace that at all levels, and I'm really proud actually of what the team have done there. So, and that's one of the things I like to acknowledge. I have a weekly email that goes out. I like to write something quite personal at the start of it. I like people to tell their stories in terms of the weekly update. It's not I like to think of it as not as a kind of boring newsletter type thing, but just something that informs people and gets them engaged and connected in what we're all about. I'll do the dishes. Why make everyone else do the dishes? I can stack and unstack a dishwasher, so don't do them every day, but it's something I just like to do.
Can I touch on that for a moment?
Yeah.
Because I've been sitting here listening, and you've almost given everyone a golden list of so many good options of things that they could include. From having the open door policy, I think might be a bit of a cliche term for it, but the known ability for people to pop in or book a time in your office hours and come and sit with you. And I really believe in that you should understand what a person does to be able to help manage them, because otherwise you don't understand the trials and tribulations that they're going through to achieve their job, to really support them. And yeah, you can't know it in detail. But when you talked about doing the dishes, I remember when I was being taught how to manage bars, and I was young and I was feeling all full of myself and running some pretty high profile places. Had a few contract shifts at the Ministry of Sound, as a name people will know, and then moved to running pubs. So I was a little bit like, and I chose to, but I was a little bit like, I'm the man, I'm the man in the pub. Like I know everything about running clubs and DJs and this and that. And I got, what does it say? That it's actually out of the Bible, but he who exalts himself shall be humbled. So I had this manager who was rough as guts, and she was the toughest old boots. And she was amazing. And one thing she said while she was the general manager and I was assistant manager on training, and she turned around at the end of the first night, she goes, right, better go and get the mop, serve the team their drinks, and then wipe down the floor while they enjoy their drink. And I was like, I work hard. I'm having the drink. They serve me. And she said, no, you serve them and you sit them down and tell them what a great job they've done, and you mop the bar floor. The last thing, like, it's covered in alcohol, it's sticky as all the sugar in that, right? So I was like, oh, I was pretty disappointed because I was the fancy manager. But it was, quite a humbling lesson coming back to do the dishes, because what it did for the team was they're like, oh, you're doing the worst job, or we're sitting here having a beer. And it's like, yeah, well, without you, I can't run the place by myself. Doesn't matter what sort of I think of myself, and I had to, turn my opinion around at that point. But it was just the amazing response the first night that blew me away, and I was like, wow. And it was a huge lesson in leadership for me. Was it's not about me being the guy in the ivory tower and being perfect. In fact, it was the opposite. Be the person at the bottom of the tower, holding everyone up, and things like doing the dishes, mopping the floor, is just a great example for people to see that leadership, and I think people respond to it.
Look, 100%. I mean, I'll talk to the cleaners. Have a yak to them. They're just people with a job. No, I'm not anybody special. I just happen to be in a role where I've got some things to do. I can't do it without people. Yeah. I can't be successful without people. No one can. So I would encourage anybody to just get out and dirty with people.
Yeah. Well, here's a couple of things on the cleaner, right? So back at that same bar, the guy who cleaned it, I had no idea, but I was chatting to him and just talk to anyone, right? So I'd gone from VIP hosting the likes of Madonna and royalty and every TV star you can imagine from Coronation Street, and that's probably not too flash, but supermodels and all this. And here I am talking to the cleaner at the end of the night, and he's like, "You're a good bugger, I was like, "Oh, well, cheers, mate. You're not too bad yourself." And took a week before they told me, but the woman who was my tough old boot manager and the cleaner just happened to be ex-husband and wife, and were really good mates, and basically were, without telling me, exchanging notes. So that was one of my little ticks of approval. But yeah, I mean, and funny enough, Madonna, when I was hosting, I was drop-jawed because it was my first big name. And I was like, and she said, "Aren't you meant to be the VIP host? Aren't you meant to be cool about this?" And I was like, "I think so." And she said, "Well, just remember, I'm a human. My name's Madonna. You're a human. What's your name?" I was like, "Ryan." She goes, "Right, let's go get some champagne and party and have fun." That's cool. And at that moment, I was like, "Oh, you're a human with a name called Madonna. I'm a human with a name called Ryan."
Yeah.
And it's to that point, right? And anyone that sort of misses that, yeah, they need to be, I guess, humbled like I was about my fancy manager role, and just treat everyone like a human. So good lesson. Thank you. Now, just looking at the time, we're on 9:26. Yes. We haven't got to the tech. Do you have a little bit of extra time, or how's your time?
I do. Yeah, I can roll for another 5 minutes or more after. Yeah.
Okay, well let's squeeze in. So shall we, as we get into the tech, or cross some culture to tech, shall we sort of break the big news that's kind of already broken?
Yeah. So I'll be leaving my role. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So yeah, so I think it's certainly out there in public. I think I'm looking for a change in pace. It's been pretty full on 3.5 years in the role, and I know that Margie Arper, who's the chief executive of Health New Zealand, will need people to be able to commit for the next number of years actually as they move through the health reform. So people may not fully understand, but you've got 20 district health boards and a number of shared services organisations that are merging into a big organisation, a national health system called Health New Zealand, and Margie Arper is the chief executive of that. The ministry is moving into more of a policy and strategy shop, and so a lot of my people, in fact almost all my people, plus a number of other people in different directorates in the Ministry of Health, all moved to Health New Zealand. And one of the things that we've got going on now is just supporting the stand-up of that organisation, which comes to fruition on the 1st of July. So there's a bill going through Parliament at the moment, which is Pilot Bill, and it effectively disestablishes the 20 DHB model and moves to the Health New Zealand model with the Māori Health Authority as well, and puts a huge emphasis on equity, access to care, a range of other things. So so the system's going through quite a big shake-up, and there's an awful lot of work to be done in the next few years just to sort of get the transition over and start do the transformation that will occur over a number of years. So I didn't want to get into it. I want Margie to effectively have the person that's there and committed. And for me, it's just that I need a change in pace because I need to be able to spend a bit more time with my aging parents. Frankly, we all go through that stage in life when they're a bit more needy, and I just don't want to be the person that wasn't there for them. Plenty of nurses will tell you when somebody's in the final stages of their life what their biggest regrets are, and one of them will be that they didn't give time to their family. So so I made a pretty tough decision because I've had an awesome run with an awesome team, and they've gone to greatness, which is good. I'm again being humble. I'm just a person with a job to do. I've really enjoyed leading them. And we've got a massive amount of work going on. I mean, getting Health New Zealand stood up and the Māori Health, Authority stood up and reorganising the ministry and getting all the tech in place for them just to operate is a big deal. But we've got so much that we built through COVID that we need to extend. I mean, COVID is just one of many communicable diseases. And so how do we use the platforms that we have for other forms of communicable disease, of which there are a number in New Zealand? And of course, the latest is monkeypox.
I was going to say that.
Yeah. So, I don't know much about it, other than I do know that they're formally going through the process of it becoming a communicable disease, because that means it can then be managed, under a public health regime. So, we've got that going on. We've got we don't have a single electronic health record in New Zealand, and we don't need one, by the way. But what we do need to do is join up the different data sources we have across the country. So we have a big program of work called Hera, which is not an acronym. It's a Māori word. It means of significance in the future. and that is our health record play, and that's a huge program of work with quite a significant amount of funding from government, and that will transform the health system itself and how people experience the health system. So that's pretty cool. We've got a new immunisation solution, a new screening solutions for breast and bowel and cervical that we need to roll out. We've got a big program around how we manage contracts and payments going on. There's a lot of work being done around what we call digital enablement and emerging tech innovation. A lot of work being done around data. We got quite significant investment in the time I've been in the role, and it's been a team effort, I have to say. But if I look at the investment, the government's committed over sort of a 4 to 5 year period in health. It's probably close to $1 billion, which is a lot of money, and it sort of flies under the radar, to be frank. And we need to obviously spend that well and get all the right outcomes. But one of my goals when I came in the role was to just get digital into a space where it was funded and seen as value adding rather than a cost. So that's pretty exciting. And there is a huge amount of work going on in health. So good people looking for a job. I'm not advertising a business, but I am saying health is the place to be for the next few years in the data and digital game. It's pretty exciting. And the tech that's available today, I call them the Lego blocks, the stuff that we can bolt together, is just quite amazing. And you're going to see much more of a merge of the sort of clinical, medical, and information technology as we move through the next just few years. So yeah, really, really exciting stuff, actually.
Awesome.
Yeah. You had a bunch of questions. I can keep talking, or we can keep talking.
Yeah. No. Both. So I was just checking. You said you've got another 5 minutes, and we're under 9:32.
I can go. I can keep going for a bit. Yep.
Okay.
I just had a quick glance at my diary, and I'm fine for a bit longer.
Yeah. So in some practical sort of terms, I know you might. It's sort of talking about the future, and I don't know if you able to answer. But with the health reform and the joining of all the different DHBs, how's it practically going to happen? Is it going to be all the operations as they are, but somehow managed like one budget, one thing, but still to the existing teams? Or is that what the new person?
It's a good question. So day one, I think the key message there is not a lot will change, because it's such a massive system that you can't just change it overnight. There are thousands of people, like, I don't know, 10 or 14,000 people that work at Auckland DHB, most who provide care. They just come and don their, uniforms and go about the business of delivering care. So they hear these scrubs and stuff. So there's a lot about it that won't change, but over time it will. There's the kind of operating model for the system and how it's all structured and stuff like that is something that's being worked through now. And what the transition plan ultimately looks like and when transformation truly takes place is something that is still being worked through. But I think the key focus is continuity of service and laying really important workable foundations so that we can then build on that and take the system forward. I know a lot of people have had in their mind that on 1 July there'll be a big switch and boom, we'll have pivoted into a modern, digitally enabled, system, but that's just not possible and not sensible if you even tried.
Yeah. Well, there's an interesting global sort of comparison. Like if we look at what happened with Waikato DHB from a security point of view, but then look at what happened with Ireland with a security point of view. So for those that don't know, the whole Irish health system went down, just like our Waikato system went down. So it wasn't just one area, it was the whole country. And when that happened, I thought, actually, is there a lesson in there? I think in your notes you talked about observation, or that might be coming up actually in the lesson. And when I looked at it, I was like, I guess there's pros and cons of every and anything, any choice that could be made. And we're really, really, really cognizant of the security risks that we face generally, but health is a big target. And, frankly, a lot of these, there's smart people out there, but they're pretty lazy.
to all you cyber crims. You're lazy. We make it easy for you, and we need to stop doing that. But we also need to basically take the target off our back. So a big single system is a cyber target. You wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
But for a whole bunch of reasons beyond that, you wouldn't do it either. So we're big about standards, interoperability, and a system that is more of an ecosystem from a technical point of view. Yeah, so cyber's a big focus.
It's funny you say that. Like, I, even back in 2005, in my first tech job, which was account manager for computer world advertising, and I think Macs were just sort of coming back into vogue after obviously being out in the sort of, I guess, in the wilderness. And I just said there, and I said, the Macs aren't targeted because there's not enough users. You've got to have a big enough user base to create inherent value. So when you get a weakness in the Microsoft system, you've got a whole globe to hit. Whereas when you find a weakness in the Mac system, you've got a really limited pool to target, and it's not as not as much inherent value. So yeah, the greater the opportunity, do you rob the corner dairy for $100, or do you rob the bank for $1 billion? Go to the bank.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a good strategy to, I guess, it's like let's not reference the Titanic maybe, but it was built to have sections deliberately to stop if one section got hit, they could block it off. But I'm not sure who was sleeping on the job on that one, but yes, I guess there'll always be that potential for, no matter what way it's done, there will be some way of weaseling if they can find it. If it's there, it could happen. So nothing's ever going to be perfect, and it's just the way, and that's where the zero trust concept comes in. Is expect someone to get through, but be able to pick them up and stop them from getting further.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we'll be very thoughtful.
Yeah. So hey, just time wise, let's get on to the last question, which is the lesson. So this is always intended to be something along the lines of, what would you tell your 20-year-old self, or what would you tell 20-year-olds out there, the lessons that you might be able to save them from learning, i.e. it could be pretty tough, they could be rough, but you've been through it and learned from it. So what have you got for us, Mr. Hunter?
Yeah, so the one I wrote down, and this obviously, I could have picked from more than a handful, to be frank. I mean, I don't think you grow as a person if you don't learn, and I don't think you learn if you don't make mistakes. But the one for me, I think, I wrote down was practicing observation, and because it doesn't necessarily come naturally to people, and it doesn't come naturally to me. And the reason I wrote down that is because it's easy to jump to conclusions. It's quite easy to be quite narrow-minded when you're listening to people. And it's quite easy to be, the person that's always got something to say. And so just sitting back and thinking about it from the point of view of what's not on your radar, what are you missing? And that's everything from the fact that someone's having a bad day through to, am I understanding what they really want here? And, I think it really can determine the success from from an outcome point of view, or from a relationship point of view, in terms of what you're seeking to achieve. So, yeah, being more observant, I think, and actually practicing that, because it's one of those things that you might say, today I'll be observant, but will you always be observant? It's one of those things you've got to make quite habitual. So sit back a bit longer, observe, think about it from their perspective, take a broader view. For me, I've learned that over the years. I wish I knew it when I was 20. I wish I knew it when I was 30. I wish I knew it when I was 40. I'll stop there. And but I've learned it over the years. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I would encourage all people to be thinking about that. That's my lesson.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That's a really good lesson. I think people talk about active listening, and I've done one of the courses, and I was quite surprised. You think, I know how to listen, but it can be quite a lesson itself, because when people aren't aware of how to listen, and I'm not saying I'm great at it, but the few little things that I picked up was that quite often you'll hear someone will say something that might be of great interest, whether it be for negative or positive or whatever reason, but it'll trigger you in a line of thinking. And you're still hearing the person speak, but it may as well just be wop, 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 while you're thinking off down that line of what they said 2 seconds ago. And you can lose your presence. So, yeah, being able to take it all in and be able to still compute, but focus on taking it all in to begin with. So you're pausing and observing. People think they have to respond immediately. You stop, I start. Well, no, there's no rules written in stone that say you have to start as soon as the other person stops speaking. And you can even say, hey, look, that's really important. I just want to take a moment to think through what you've said. And see, that pause was okay. No one died what I paused. Some really great, because I think
otherwise it becomes very transactional, and that's the, I don't think you get a lot out of it. It's highly transactional. I should say there's someone called Stuart Van Rye who some people will have seen on LinkedIn. He's the person that triggered me to think about actually, being much more observant and actually practicing it. So Van Rye, I think is his last name. He posts a few things on LinkedIn actually, and I saw something he posted, and I've known Stuart from many years ago. I haven't seen him for years, but I thought, hey, I need to think about that. And when I sat back and thought about it, I thought, because he sort of posed the question, if you only knew it when you were younger, and I thought, it's such a good point.
Yeah,
and it's one that I actually need to continue to practice.
Cool. So, closing remarks, and actually, I might spring something else on you, because we could, carry on talking for hours. I think, or I could carry on listening for hours. But what I'm going to hit you with, if you can answer, is what's next.
Well, undecided at this stage. Got a few irons in the fire. Looking for something interesting and challenging. Yeah, no, definitely. I'm not planning on a sort of long 6-month break or anything like that. My wife's got a job, so we can't just shoot off overseas, and which would be appealing. But you've got a few interesting sort of opportunities that I'm exploring. So yeah, there'll be some more on that, at some point. Yeah.
Okay. Well, look, let's give you the opportunity for closing remarks, because everyone does have that. And the closing remark is, what is your final thing you'd like to share across everything that we've spoken about today? And it may not be particular about the culture, the lesson, or the tech, but it might be something that while we've been talking, you think, yeah, that's what I want to give people to walk away with. But just to do a bit of a summary, we've had Shayne Hunter, the CDO of MLH, on. Talked a little bit about the last 2 years and how crazy it's been, but how amazing the team is who have pulled together to do a whole range of things. And this is more in the tech part of the answer, standing up the New Zealand health, I've forgotten quite the term, but also the Māori Health Authority with Hera and a range of other initiatives. But back into the culture, there is like a long list in this session that you can look through and listen and take them out. Key one that I really enjoyed was doing the dishes, and but just basically, putting your team above yourself so that they can see that the leaders are human and that you're approachable. And one of them, it just goes a long way as being a human rather than someone being in the ivory tower and unapproachable. So very cool. And the lesson is to observe, and you could almost say is to listen, but we know that word, and we probably don't take as much from it as when we flip it to something like observe, which is to really take in what someone is sharing and to think about it more holistically, so that it's not just the words they're talking about, but understanding where they're coming from. So with that, Shayne, what are your closing remarks to give everyone to take away?
Well, I'm a believer in the power of connection, and I would encourage people to take the opportunity to connect with other people. I think there's a lot of 1 + 1 = 3, the sum of the many parts, And so maybe I might just make a final plug for AFQY. I saw it first announced, actually, I think on LinkedIn, and thought, what a bloody great idea. And when is it going to come to Wellington? So, and then I can't think actually how long ago I saw that, to be honest. Time moves so quickly, but I think what you're doing, which is, you know, bringing people together and creating those connections is a great thing. And so what you do fits with what I think is a great message to people. Stay connected.
Well, thank you. I'm just sort of sitting here, and believe it or not, that was unexpected and not organised. So thank you very much. Connection. I've just quickly, I've been doing quite a bit of work in culture space, actually for one of the big 4 banks, and it was quite an amazing process. And I had that complete imposter syndrome. Why me? What, you know? But I was given an opportunity, and I'm not a professional in this space. Don't have a degree in whatever it might be that you have a degree in to be a professional in that space. But we put together a program, and it moved the heartbeat score, which was one measure. It moved the heartbeat score over the organisation average, which it hadn't been for a long time. We're talking years. And while there are other initiatives, and to be honest, we didn't have a hard measurement in place, the feedback and the sentiment was that the program was an obvious and clear impact in that. So from there, actually, adding another little bit of a segue in, the work I've been doing with my counsellor, which I've posted about, after the fact, we're talking about it, and he was, sort of doing, and do you feel good about that? And I was like, he goes, you're allowed to feel good about that. You know, I'm not very good at taking compliments or accepting that I've made an achievement. Just one of the things we work through. And he said, well, what you're doing is one of the 5 pillars of well-being, connectedness, and that's partly why it's such a success. So he's then added in all the science in the background, and to be frank, there's a lot more coming in the space. So we might have to book a time and have a bit of a chat about your future, sir. Maybe there's something about connectedness in there that links to AFQY, who knows? But we'll catch up. We'd love to catch up if it's possible for an offline chat as well. But for now, we will let everyone get back to work. Let you crack on with preparing to, I was going to say retire, but it's not retire, just to resign, and look after your wonderful parents who obviously made you the person you are today. And thank you so much to you and your team for everything you've done for the country over COVID. Everything you've had to put up with, the good, the bad, and certainly some ugly that happened in all different aspects as we learned and went through what is this crazy world with COVID. But essentially, thank you for keeping the health systems running and ensuring that when we needed to, we could access them, and the people that work in them could operate them. So huge thanks to you and the team.
Thank you. All right, very nice to chat.
All right. You stay on, and we'll just press the end, and we'll say ka kite ano to everybody. Thank you very much.
I'm here.